Hi everyone, welcome back, and might I add, Merry Christmas. I hope you are all having a wonderfully relaxing, hard-earned holiday break right now. We are going to continue down that path as well. Today, our project is going to be pretty small, relaxing. It's going to be creative and fun, but smaller in scale. And the best part, really the absolute coolest part is it's all going to be holiday themed. It's going to be Christmas themed. So this is kind of cheesy, but of course I have my Santa hat on while we do this. Of course it's kind of cut off on the frame, but the astute, detail-oriented members of my audience here are going to notice that there is a giant hint right in front of you guys as to what we're doing. Today we're going to be doing a bit of animation work that is obviously holiday Christmas themed. And we're going to be using Rive to do this. Rive is a real-time interactive design tool. And what that means is that you can draw and animate on their software, and we can integrate those assets into any platform. Any platform is pretty wide, but Rive is able to bring those animations to a variety of apps, websites, and output it to a variety of platforms. So let's look at the first part. Rive is an online design tool. So if any of you have played around with Adobe Illustrator, you will recognize some of these elements. It is vastly simplified in the online, in Rive's online editor here, but you'll notice that you can change the color of various elements. You can put circles, rectangles, you can draw with a pen. Very basic, and of course you can animate. So we can have different keyframes and we can play through those animations. That was not a great animation. But the more exciting part is that we can start bringing these animations into different platforms. Here, Rive has outlined a number of platforms available. We are familiar with our old friend Flutter, of course. So Dart projects will allow you to bring it to Android, iOS, desktop, and web. JavaScript will allow you to bring it to web and some desktop applications. React, Swift for iOS, C++ for desktop applications. Not really sure what this is, but you can bring those animations and do super cool things like this on their front page, where the person's gaze is directed at where your mouse is. And so what we want to do today is use Rive to create an animation into an app. I'm trying to think. I think Flutter might be an obvious choice, but if we want to keep things simple, I think JavaScript might be the quickest, easiest way to do this. Anyways, I am not a big fan of Rive's web application here. So I have in front of me an iPad, Apple Pencil to do some of the drawing. And one of the options is to drag and drop SVG, which are vector files, into here. So if you're familiar with Adobe Illustrator, any sort of vector editing software, then you are in great shape. You're now viewing my iPad mirrored onto the screen. You'll see that this is my canvas and this is the iPad. If I were to draw certain things onto a screen, you are able to see it as we go. Now, as I mentioned before, we are going to be trying to create SVG files, which are vector graphics. Vectors are, well, let's back up for a moment. You can edit vectors with Adobe Illustrator, that's probably by far the most popular tool on the market. But if you're looking for something free and open source, Inkscape is the way to go. I have been using this for a long while, and in many ways it makes no sense to use this software called Clip Studio to edit vectors, because it is more like Photoshop than it is like Illustrator. But I just feel more comfortable with it, and I am not doing great art anyways. But let's jump back to the point. What are vector graphics? Well, if you think about your classic computer images, PNG files, JPEGs, TIFF files, what you're doing is you have a massive grid of pixels. And so here we have a grid of, let's say, 100 by 100 white pixels. And if we write down my name here, what we've done is just turned a number of pixels from white to blue. And so as a result, when you zoom in really, really close, you don't get a crisp edge. You don't get a crisp edge around here. Instead, you get this jagged staircase. And that's all the information that is stored in a classic raster image. And when you move all of this, you have no options. It is one image, a grid of pixels that have been colored differently, and they all move together. But if I were to go into a vector layer in this software and do the same thing, you'll find that you don't just see a grid of pixels. What you start to see is a path and points on that path. You get a lot of data where you can start manipulating the image a little bit at a time. And not only can you manipulate it this way, but there are all sorts of after effects that computationally can be done. So for example, if I don't like how my A looks right now, I really don't, but I can start thickening that line. I can start moving that path. I can start doing calculations to get rid of excesses, to remove, say, this piece of the A, or when calculate where it intersects this other piece. And so you can start doing all sorts of very interesting things with vector graphics. But one of the key things that I'm unable to show you in this program is that when you zoom in and in and in into a vector graphic, you should see very, very crisp curves and corners and edges. You don't get this staircase thing that happens because you're pixeling. Since it's a path, the computer will always know this is the degree, this is the curve, this is how it should look like. So as you zoom in, you should always get a crisp path. And you know, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this because this software wasn't geared for that. And so everything is constantly converted into vector, but we can fix that as soon as we move into Rive. Anyways, I'm going to be using this software to draw us a little holiday Christmas doodle, and we're going to animate it and then bring it into probably a website, maybe an app instead. So stay tuned and hope you enjoy watching the following design work. Okay, so we ran into a tiny problem here. You'll see that I have Adobe Illustrator put up here just to fix that minor issue. So I found out about this. I suspected this might be the case. So Clip Studio, which I used on my iPad to draw out this illustration, was a brand new update that allowed us to export vectors out as SVG files. SVG has multiple versions and kind of inconsistencies between programs. And so I suppose it wasn't all that surprising, but when I imported it into Rive, it didn't look like what I expected it to look like. So if we look at the tree, the white and the dots, they're very jagged. If we look at the dog that I drew, it's very jaggedy. It doesn't have the nice edges. And the box looked okay, but everything else just was off a little bit because I don't think it was exporting the brushes out properly. Now, what was interesting is when you put it into any other program, say Illustrator or Edge or Chrome, they looked all right. Now, admittedly, I think it still looks a little different from what I intended it to look like, but certainly we lost all of that really jagged kind of weirdness that we see here. So what I did was just open it in Illustrator and save it again as another SVG. I saved it as 1.1. I don't think it makes a difference because Rive, when they were creating this, almost certainly looked at Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, as like, number one, we need to support Illustrator 100%, and everything else is secondary. And so I'm actually a little saddened because when I looked online, it looks like Rive has a lot of odd glitches and inconsistencies, not just with Clip Studio. Clip Studio, totally understood. It's brand new. It's janky even on the Clip Studio side, but things you would think would be perfect, like Inkscape, is very popular. Apparently also doesn't look quite right on the screen. So Adobe Illustrator is the way to go, apparently. So what I did was just load up each of the files. Well, I split up the tree, the dog, the box, the top of the box into different files. And I am going to move these Adobe Illustrator files back into Rive so that we can start animating. Oh, before we end, I just wanted to show you guys the difference between a raster and a vector image. So a raster, as I explained before, is like a JPEG file or a PNG or what you're normally used to seeing. So if we zoom in to this tree, you'll start to see fuzziness. And that's as much as I can zoom in, but you'll see fuzziness, you'll see jagged edges, basically all of these kind of compression artifacts, because it's saving it pixel by pixel. And if the JPEG understands this is the resolution you look at, they expect you not to kind of pixel peep over here. And so they're willing to put a bit of jaggedness, a bit of artifacts here to make the file smaller. That all makes sense. Everybody with a computer should understand that concept. If you take a picture on your cell phone, it is a JPEG. And when you zoom in and in and in, there are some sort of issues looking at it. But if we were looking at this Adobe Illustrator file, it is saving the paths. Like you see where I scribbled and colored in, they saved it all as a path and mathematically, programmatically draw it back out. So when you zoom in, it doesn't lose any of the sharpness. And we can zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. And that edge over here between the beige and the green is perfect every time, because the computer knows there is a distinct boundary here, and no matter how much you zoom in, it is a sharp boundary between these two lines. And so when you zoom in, it is perfect. And so an image, like a real life picture photo, would never be able to be raster, or at least in my mind can't ever be a vector image. It is certainly a raster image. But if you do illustrations, like you want to draw cartoons, they can definitely be vectors. And you'll find that most logos and design work is done in vector, because you can blow it up over and over and over and make these giant, wall-sized posters, and they will still look fantastic. Anyways, back to animating. Okay, so yesterday I played around a bit with this animation, and I gotta say I'm pretty proud. I am not exactly an artistic person, but check it out. This is our animation. And so you'll see that this is all the vector files that I've drawn on the side. There's a Christmas tree, there's the box. Obviously, if I had more talent, we can draw a better Christmas tree and a better box. And of course, do a better animation. But how this all works is that these are each layers in my SVG file. And I am able to animate each layer separately. There may be ways to do different things, like you break down to all of the individual lines and shapes, but for our purposes, we just have the box and the lid. And how we've done it is we animated each separate element. So the extra tree light, which is the green, blue, yellow dots, they're at this bottom row, and they're doing their own thing. They just turn on and off, on and off, on and off in the background. Now we have our puppy face, which moves up, still behind the box, but moves up, pushes the box out of the way. He kind of rotates a little bit and stays alive for those few seconds. And then finally, we have the box lid that is securely on top of the present. Then it kind of gets pushed up and then tilts onto the side and stumbles over onto the end. So that is our animation. What our next step is to do, oh, actually, I should probably move this over here. The animations can get a lot more sophisticated. So we saw the very front page, we have this awesome animation, and I think what it's doing is it's running a different animation. This is stock where she's just breathing and blinking, but it detects where your mouse is and chooses a different animation or makes a different animation depending on where your mouse is, so that it's always staring where the mouse is. And Rive 2, this page has a bunch of really cool animations. This one shows you that you can kind of toggle the speed. You can do different things. I think there's an animation behind in the canvas when you toggle this, and this one's very cute. I love it, but you can just change the colors inside the glass by clicking these buttons. So what it's saying is you can respond to various things. Say on JavaScript, you're clicking different buttons or toggles and your animation can change. We have just a single animation, and that was difficult for me as is. And so I'm not going to push my luck and try multiple animations, but what I'm going to do is try and put this into an app or a web page. So stay tuned. Okay, so I am calling this done. I think we've set out to do something pretty simple, and we've more or less done it. So if I just rebuild this app, it just automatically runs the animation. It's super simple, not a whole ton there, but what is very interesting is, let's pause it and we can keep playing. What is very interesting is that we have the simple animation here. And so every time we initiate, it starts this animation. And what that tells me is that you can have the multiple animations down here. Remember, we were talking about how on the Rive animation site, they have this face that can move left and right. And so I assume they have like a list of animations of left and right, up, down, and different angles. And so depending on where your location is, it runs a different animation. And so we could have, puppy popping out of the box. We can have blinking tree or waving tree and a variety of different animations. And all you have to do is say click a number of different buttons. So one might be what we have here, and another one might be the tree waving left and right, or the star falling off the top, whatever it may be. And so it's super simple. You can see that we used a bunch of software. I think if you had a little bit more artistic skill than I do, you can do something really amazing here. There's so much room for polish. We're looking at this drawing, and you can see my scribbles aren't the most professional, and similarly, this is not the most polished drawing in the world. And the animation that I did, I was pretty happy with it before, but now I feel like the timing of the box is a bit off. So let me just move left and right here. Okay, so I think my animation work definitely needs some work, because let's just loop this. When we do this box, yeah, that's okay. And then when we toss it up, there's that speed jump, and I think I can move these keyframes a little bit at a time to make sure that it looks a bit more right. And similarly, I think, yeah, I don't necessarily know if that's the way the box would act in real life. I avoided it tipping over entirely so that the lid is flipped upside down, because I don't know how the ribbon would look. I think I might have to break that out because the ribbon would be crushed by the ground. So, long story short, I think animation work can use some work, and this app can definitely use some polish as well. I mean, it does nothing basically, but we have all the little bits here together to put in an animation, and you know, that's what this learning process is about. This is a Christmas animation, but what I really wanted to do, what I think this will be useful in the future, is to run like a custom loading animation. And so in this one, on their site, they have this really cool animation where you select how many rooms are in the house. And so you have this very, very interactive, type of scroll bar over here. We can definitely do something similar. So if I was, well, I'm thinking loading screen, but you might have like maybe a very Christmas oriented loading screen where the loading bar loads up the Christmas light, so it works its way up the tree or down the tree. But you have all the tools, and hopefully you're a little more artistic minded than I am. But I am actually, so I can be picky all I want, but this is actually looking so much better than I thought it would. So let's just, before I close off this video, let's just run this through one more time. Look at that! Okay, thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, click the like button or subscribe. And as usual, this is such a new channel. I am always looking for feedback. Constructive feedback is always really, really helpful, and I will take that into account. So thanks for watching, guys.